Hello and welcome to the York Creatives Podcast. My name is Ben Porter, and each week you can join me as I chat to someone from York's creative community. This week's guest is Grace Abell. Grace is a graphic designer with a background in publishing and art directing magazines. She stepped away from that into branding and is now set up independently in York. She also runs designer and illustrator meetups, and she's very keen to meet other designers and illustrators in the city. In this episode we chat about all that and more, including her involvement with the Guild of Entrepreneurs and her honest advice in starting your own business. So Grace, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
So I'd like to start by reading a testimonial which I found on your website. So when I was reading through, there was something that caught my eye, and I'm going to read it just to make sure I get it right. It says, Grace delivered a smart and effective brochure from a very woolly brief, on time and on budget. Now, for someone who does a lot of client work or a lot of creative work, that might sound like quite a normal thing. But for other people who aren't used to that kind of work, it's that whole thing of like, here's some information. I don't really know what I want, but I want you to make it for me. Could you explain the way you approach this brief and your kind of thought process in those kind of things where people aren't really sure what they want and they just say, make me something?
Well, that was a fantastic brief because it was almost non-commercial. So it was a brochure to create a community pub out of a pub that had been proposed to close down. So therefore it was a very limited target audience, sort of more or less the couple of thousand people who lived in Merton. So it wasn't massively corporate. They weren't asking for big money from people. They're just small donations as well. So it didn't need to look particularly slick. They handed over the information that I needed and some fantastic vintage photographs. And I really decided for that one that it really could do with a kind of a bespoke look. So I dedicated my time on that one to doing some hand-drawn lettering on the cover to really make it stand out and not look something like junk mail, essentially.
So what about your background? Did you come into design from an art background, or was it more because you were in publication, is that right?
Yes. So I went to All Saints School on Blossom Street, and I had some very supportive art tutors. I was fully aware that I didn't have a particularly special talent, but I could prove that I could put in the hours, and they were really supportive of me on that. I discovered graphic design when I was about 17, and although around me there weren't many designers, there were artists, but they pointed me in the directions of Sir Peter Blake and Marilyn Cook, who did all the Sex Pistols artwork, and they were really graphic designers. So I kind of followed the traditional education system, went to York College for my art foundation, then went to the University of Cumbria's Carlisle campus to do my degree in graphic design. Upon graduating, I had a couple of options. I could intern at the now defunct More magazine, I could intern with Saatchi & Saatchi in London, or I could take a junior design role at Single Track Mountain Biking magazine. And because Single Track were the only people offering me real money, I took that. And as much as I loved editorial design, I had no idea about publishing and I had no idea about bikes. And it was actually a really bold step for them to employ me because I was 22 and I was female and knew nothing about bikes, whilst their readership was 35, male, and would spend as much on a bike as they would on a car. So I'm really grateful for them to present me with that opportunity, even though felt like I was a really unlikely candidate. Yeah, Single Track was my first job in design, and that was fantastic, and I stayed there for 3 years before moving to York.
So you're working on a horticultural project, marketing, is it horticultural career to millennials?
Yeah.
That must be quite tricky because they say marketing anything to millennials is really hard, which I don't necessarily believe, but I'd like to get your take on that.
I think focusing too much on the target audience is the wrong way to go because actually you're just marketing it to people. Okay, young people who are thinking about their careers, and that's a really fantastic opportunity. You can showcase what kind of different careers in horticulture there are, because it's not just about being a domestic gardener who are kind of at the coalface of gardening careers. There's retail careers, there's a lot of scientific careers in biology and chemistry, there's a lot of travel careers. I was told of the story of one, he's probably only about 17, one guy who just loves plants so much. He loved this tree and he flew out to Chile or somewhere just to sleep under this tree for a night. And it was, there are people, and young people are so passionate about what they love. So it's really nice to embrace that, and hopefully if it kind of inspires someone to maybe go and get some more training in that field, then that's wonderful.
It's important to have people who represent the kind of, I say lesser known, but the careers that aren't kind of rammed down people's throats as much. Like I remember when I was at school, it's like you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and those typical things that everyone pulls out. And I remember like I wanted to be a DJ and a stuntman, and nobody talked about those things. So it's great that there are kind of projects to market those things, because there's definitely people interested in them.
There's also a lot of money in them as well. I mean, it's maybe not so much in York, but who needs to stay in York? It's a national campaign, and hopefully it will bring in the right people.
So what's your opinion on York then? Because doing what you do, you could really work from anywhere. So what keeps you here? What do you think the creative scene is doing well? What do you think it could do better?
As a freelancer, I love York because it's full of small businesses. I was founding deputy master of the Guild of Entrepreneurs, where it really didn't matter how much money you had. It didn't matter what your business was. You could just come along, and it didn't matter how old you were. We've been open to people from the age of 18 upwards. So it's always been a massive spectrum of people who get to network at like a really affordable rate, which is quite a rare thing. That's been really good to link up my creative business with other people's businesses and see how they're doing. There's a lot of really great things going in York at the moment with the City of Media Arts now. It's fantastic. And Spark York opened at the weekend. But actually, I just want to give props to the people who have been here for a couple of years and are just plodding on, doing their thing and keeping going at it, because it is really hard. For example, I was in the Lottie Inge Gallery today. That's been here for a few years now, I think. But it was great because I got to meet gallery owner and we had a chat and got to see some fantastic work. And she's just there day in, day out and Bootham doing her thing. And it's the persistence that's going to, in the long term, keep us going as a creative city.
Yeah. And hopefully she'll get quite a lot of recognition for all the hard work she's putting in for Bloom, which is coming up soon.
Very excited about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you run design and illustration meetups?
Yes. So I got to about January, February earlier this year, and I've been freelancing for almost 3 years now. And I always thought, I really want to meet all the other freelancers in York because we're all doing the same thing. We might be targeting the same kind of clients. Let's just go to the pub. I want to meet some because it can be a very lonely existence as well. So I just created a Facebook event and thought, okay, well, set a date and a time. I thought, okay, maybe 3 people will turn up, and that'll be 3 wonderful people. And on the day, 21 people turned up, which,
nice.
I didn't realise, which I really wasn't expecting. So that was really encouraging. And everyone said, we need to do another one. So I thought, okay, so I'm trying to make them quarterly and just seeing how they go, because it's just all about meeting people like you do for this podcast. So we've got one coming up on Thursday the 7th of June at the Eagle and Child at 6 p.m. and we're hoping to be in the beer garden this time because hopefully we'll have some summer sunshine again. If you're creative in York, you're very welcome.
And you're particularly keen to meet more female designers and illustrators, is that right?
Yeah, it's a really hard industry to remain in as a woman. Around 50% of graphic design graduates are women. That percentage doesn't stay, and as you rise further and further through the ranks, you are more likely to be a man if you're going to be successful as an art director or a studio owner. So women do need to support each other. I'm a one-man band, but when I do hire people, I do hire women to help my business. So last week I worked with Olivia Brabs, who's a photographer, and then last year I hired a lady called Maisie who helped me with my administration, and just little things like that while you're doing someone who might not get that work a bit of a favour. And it's just a small thing, but hopefully as my business grows, I'd love to be able to employ some other female designers one day and help them up the ladder as well.
Yeah. It sounds like you've got a really strong vision for where you want to go and how you want to build the company.
In a way, I think all business owners do need a bit of a vision, because there are some days where it can be really challenging. However, I'm in quite a privileged position where I'm just rolling with the punches at the moment and seeing what kind of clients come my way and kind of fulfilling their briefs for them. When you start a business, it's so easy to quit, and most businesses do fold within the first 2 years just because it's easier just to go get a job. It's certainly more profitable just to go get a job. But now I'm 3 years in, it's going actually really well for me. I'm meeting lots of really wonderful people with fantastic businesses, and I just want to see where it goes, and that's the exciting thing. I don't need a plan for this time next year. But, all being well, I can reinvest in the community in York and give a little bit back.
Are there any particular resources you'd recommend for someone starting out their own business? Are you into books, podcasts, YouTube videos? What would you recommend?
I would recommend networking. That's to really anyone, whether in York or not. As I said, I am part of the York Guild of Entrepreneurs, which membership is £20 a year, which is really fantastic. And that's been the only really effective way of doing some marketing. I also had a meeting with a business coach once, and she told me what I'm doing right, where I'm going wrong. And actually I learned a lot from her, not just to apply to my own business, but I could take those tips and apply them to all my clients as well. And that's really helped with things like branding work. And so if a client comes to me and they've got quite an abstract business name, I can maybe recommend, are you sure that's hitting your target audience? Is that what you'd want to be known as? How's that going to look on the web? How's that going to sustain you in 5 years' time? Overall, following your gut and just focusing on doing what you want to do. For example, if you want to be a graphic designer, design things, focus on doing what you do, and then the work will come in. My one business tip is just to be as literal as possible for commercial success. It's easy to leave art school with a lot of fantastic ideas which are executed in the advertising world by brands with money such as Coca-Cola. Bring it back down to earth. If you've got a shop on a Bishey Road or somewhere, you need to be a bit more literal. So if you name your business what you do, because then people know what it is. I made the mistake at the beginning and I had quite an abstract business name. No one knew what I did. I changed it to my surname plus the word design afterwards, and it suddenly worked for everyone. So just be as literal as possible, and that might mean you can't always be the most creative, but if you want to succeed in business, as I assume everyone does because they need to make a living, that's certainly the best way forward.
You can be creative with limitations as well. Often, if you think you're limiting your creativity, you're just funneling it somewhere else. That's
true, and I work with, I'd say about 50% of my clients are people who are just starting a business from scratch. They might not have done it before, or it's a new business anyway. And branding is a really important thing to get right, obviously. But once we've established a brand, we've got a bit of personality for the business. And from there, we can take the potential for creativity and post that, kind of distribute that to other areas of their marketing, or if they've got a shop, some branding within the shop. So that's quite exciting.
What are some misconceptions about what branding is?
Misconceptions, that's a really good question. That it's easy to do. I'll go with that. That it's easy to do, or that your 17-year-old son or your dog or your monkey can design a brand. It's not quite as simple as that, and I think the demands on branding are so much more intense than they were maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, because now we have the internet and everyone wants not just a website, but they want an app. They might want to go on a podcast. They might want to do some kind of event, and branding needs to be really flexible for that. It's not just about a logo anymore. It's not just about having a nice letterhead. So there are a lot more demands on branding, and that's sometimes harder to do than it looks.
So on your website, you're making 10 commitments to be more ethical in your business. Why are you doing that?
I'm doing that mostly because I have some clients who really do take care of the world around us. They look after wildlife, they plant trees, they do all sorts, and I want to honour their commitment to that. So, and graphic design can be a bit of a wasteful industry because there are so many edits and alts to do to work, and I can be printing off reams and reams of work that which could just go in the bin. So my commitment is that I'm going to honour what they do by recycling when possible. And my commitments are called Planet and People. So it's not just about saving paper, it's about looking after people well. And that sometimes includes purchasing well, purchasing locally when possible to keep money within York or within Yorkshire, reducing waste, reducing the carbon footprint, and also hiring locally as well. Thankfully, there's some fantastic talent in York, so I don't have to look far for when I want to hire a new resource for my business.
So what's next for you this year then?
What's next for me? I wish I knew that. In the immediate future, I've got more horticultural work coming up, which is exciting, and we'll hopefully be able to develop the careers campaign a little bit more. I'm also working with a fantastic dance filmmaker called Grace Owen. She offered me the opportunity to collaborate, and I have no idea about dance really. I have less idea about film, but I thought she's really creative and she could really offer me something quite fun and unusual, and something that will really be unique. So I'm working with her on some, hopefully they're going to be creative images combining her dance photography and my typographic skills, but we shall see how those turn out. It's still a bit of a mystery to myself.
Well, if people want to find out more about you or get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
My portfolio website is at abelldesign.co.uk. That is ABELL. Is how you pronounce the surname. And then I'm quite active on Instagram, that's Abell_design. I'm on Twitter at the same, Abell_design. And then I have a Facebook page, which kind of all the new work goes there first. So if you want to really keep up to date with me, Facebook is quite a good place to go. That's facebook.com/AbellDesignYork. Thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you.